Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to today's Harmonize to Energize. My name is Terry Matthews. I'm presenting this webinar remotely on behalf of the Mary Burmeister Jin Shin Jyutsu Institute, which is the authentic source of teaching Jin Shin Jyutsu in the world. Welcome everybody. I hope you're all doing well and you've had a good week, and welcome in particular to anyone who's new to Jin Shin Jyutsu or has only recently become acquainted with it. And it would be very useful to us, if you didn't mind, if you could just pop in the chat there and just say, I'm new. It'll help us maybe frame how we teach certain things if you're not familiar with our terms. So we'd be very grateful if you could do that. And then I'm going to begin by just introducing the Jin Shin Jyutsu website. Here we go. I'm going to turn the screen share on. So here we are, www.jsjinc.net. And on this website, you can get all the different courses that we're running. And coming up on this Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a new Jin Shin Jyutsu instructor, Maria Miniello, will be doing a 2-hour presentation on looking at the 3 methods of correction. And I'll pause there just to say, for the new people, generally speaking, it's more beneficial if you've actually done at least one of our classes, one of our basic classes, before you would do a course like this, because it's referring to material from our textbook practitioner level. However, from time to time, people do turn up who are completely brand new. You do get 3 months of a replay. So if in between you fill in the gaps, you still got the replay to go and check. Anyway, there's all the information. Register today. Want to use PayPal? Click here. And I will actually be hosting with Julie from New Zealand, so I look forward to seeing those of you who turn up. Right now, we have Sarah Harper giving a 6-day self-help class. It started 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's all the information, and here are your organizers and where you can register. Don't worry if it's already started. You'll be let in, and again, you'll have a replay so you can catch up the bits if you didn't get in at the beginning. And if there are any other classes that you're interested in, you can click on the links here, and you can get listings of the replays and the fees. And basically, we're only teaching online in the US at the moment. In Europe, there are some live classes. But because of COVID, it's created a situation where the prerequisites to become a practitioner have altered slightly. And often I get asked, well, do these replays count towards the prerequisites? Yes, they do. For the 5-day practitioner basic class, if you do 2 replays here plus 1 live, you can be considered to be authorized. We are working as hard as we can towards having live classes again, but as I say, at this time they're mainly online. Okay, so there you have it. Visit our website, check it out, and you'll learn a lot more about us. But briefly, for those of you that are really new, Jin Shin Jyutsu is an art of harmonizing the life energy in the body as it moves through what we call energy pathways, left and right of the spine. There's 26 what we call safety energy locks, which we can adjust by placing our hands on them. And when we place our hands, it helps move the energy that may be stuck in different frequencies within our body, or different depths, Mary would call them, related to the harmony or not of our organ functions and the energy that provides the manifestation of the organ functions. Okay. If that all sounds a little bit complex, someone once said Jin Shin Jyutsu is complicatedly simple, but simply complicated. So anyway, without further ado, those of you that have been following Harmonize to Energize will know that once upon a time on a Wednesday, it was totally dedicated to story time, which meant people from the community, practitioners and students, instructors, would come on and share with us their inspiring stories and maybe give us a little bit of self-help to go along with, related to their stories, perhaps, or not. And now that Webinar Jam have provided an opportunity for Q&A, when you listen to these presentations, you may have some questions. We won't necessarily have half an hour. We may have 5 to 10 minutes to attempt them, but you are welcome to put your questions down. And again, when you left the website, the sound acquired an echo, did it? Oh, well, let me get rid of that website and see if that makes a difference. Is it still an echo? That's weird. It may be because, hold on, I'm going to do something here. Apologies, folks. Is the echo gone? I think it has. Yes, I think, yeah. I hope it has. Anyway, without further ado, today's mystery presenter is Jennifer. Welcome, Jennifer Bradley.
Hi, everybody. I cannot see myself on the little black screen, but I know that happened last time, so I'm not going to worry about it. Hopefully you'll be able to still see me and hear me okay. Terry, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Jennifer. And you?
Good. I'm glad to be here. I'm here from Lexington, Kentucky, and I saw Pamela from Louisville, and oh, here I am. Pamela from Louisville and Janice from Georgetown. I just wanted to greet you both. There's quite a few Jin Shin Jyutsu students and practitioners in Kentucky, and there's something special about Kentucky. I came here years ago to marry, and I stayed here for the energy. It's really fascinating. It's an amazing, amazing place to work and practice. So, oh, and Claudia, I guess maybe Claudia's from Kentucky too. This is a great spot. So I've been on one time before, and I talked a little bit about, actually a lot about how I came to Jin Shin Jyutsu, long involved story through a sister experiencing cancer, and then got help for myself and started to study. And so I've been a practitioner since 2008. And when I think of what I know now compared to what I knew then, I feel like I was such a newbie. There was so much more to know. And yet, I'll tell you, for those of you who maybe are new and are wondering, gosh, do I know enough to get started? If you have done the study to be an authorized practitioner, yes, you have a really wonderful, powerful place to start. And you have a whole journey ahead of you of where you can go. I'm still learning every single day. I work with people. I work with animals. I became a member of Adele Lisa's Jin Shin Jyutsu for Your Animal Companions faculty. Oh gosh, now it's been a little more than a year ago. We got waylaid by COVID, just like the other Jin Shin Jyutsu classes have. So we've been doing some online teaching, in-person teaching, and remote. In-person is not as much. We're starting to open up again. But that world of animals is an amazing place for you to be too. And just know what you're learning working with people can be translated to animals. And the Jin Shin Jyutsu for Animals practice basically starts in the realm of the Jin Shin Jyutsu self-help. So we use very simple touch for our animals. They don't like us to move around a lot. But that too, a little bit of my background and what I want to tell you some stories about today, because this is story time. And if you all have been practicing for a while, you know we have stories. And one of the difficult things is I wish more of our clients, the people that we work with and care for and share self-help with, I wish they would tell more people. Wouldn't it be great if there was a YouTube channel dedicated to all of those people who could tell their story about how Jin Shin Jyutsu has helped them? Because it is a huge number of people. My background started a lot with cancer because that's where I learned about it for my sister. And I volunteered at a cancer center. I ended up working there as a paid practitioner for 10 years here in Kentucky. So if you're thinking you want to be a practitioner working in a medical setting, I want to tell you it's absolutely possible. And you will develop relationships with the doctors and the nurses and the clinicians and the social workers, and they will begin to see your benefit. The most important thing is to be certain in yourself, certain that you know what you're doing, because you do. So now I work with cancer patients from what I call discovery through wherever the journey takes us. In my practice, when I first started, one of the things that happened as I was volunteering was I would do chairside Jin Shin Jyutsu in the chemotherapy clinic. And one day, and these were 20-minute sessions, and because they were in chairs, it was kind of hard. You couldn't reach under necessarily. It was hard to work around equipment, so you had to be creative. This is where the art comes in. One day I had a woman who had throat cancer, which is one of the most painful cancers you can have. You can imagine. You can't swallow, difficult to eat. And also because energy isn't moving, you get a lot of blockage in the head, a lot of nasal congestion, a lot of phlegm. It's horrendous. So this woman was getting some treatment there, some chemo, and she was in tremendous pain in her throat. And it was hard to know how to work with her because there was so much equipment. I oftentimes pay attention to that small little voice that comes in. I feel like it rifles through all the information that we've learned in class and comes up with a solution. And what I heard that day was the special flow that we use for the bladder. So if you all have ever used that flow, if you're somebody who's been a practitioner, take a look at your book 2, right there by the bladder flow. There is a special bladder flow. It's one that shows all the zigzaggedy lines of things in disharmony. And I had a vision of that picture, and it shows a lot going through the neck in the front, not necessarily always in the back, but I just pictured that and I thought that might be helpful. And she was also very thirsty, hard to drink. So you just place a hand on the side of the neck, and the other hand is at the outer ankle. So if you're a student, that safety energy locks 12 and 16. I held there for quite some time. She started to kind of just drift off. Then I moved my hand from the 12. I was holding her middle finger on the side, same side I was working on, that happened to be the right side, which is kind of about right now. And then after a while, I just reached down and I held her pinky toe. And after we finished, I could feel things crazy and starting to harmonize and move in and get very smooth. She woke up, and with tears in her eyes, she looked at me and she said, "I have no more pain. Who are you? Where did you come from? You must be an angel." This was a simple 3-step flow. And it was something I had used for this for the first time. It ended up being kind of part of what I kept in my toolkit for this type of cancer. But it was powerful to see how a simple session of 20 minutes could make such a difference for people. The other thing I did in the chemo clinic a lot was during the first chemotherapy session. If you're a student, I will tell you that I I would do the first method of correction oftentimes for people, regardless of what was going on, because it really kind of settled the trauma and the fear of being there. Simple to do in a chair, you know, hold over to their opposite side and go through their fingers, and you can tuck behind the hip and the outside of the knee. This one was always powerful. But the other thing that was always great, and I had a guy there, he had a brain tumor, and he was having his first chemo, and he was having quite the cocktail of medications. And some people call chemotherapy poison. The way I think of it is all alchemy. It is all making changes to the energy of the body. So I would say, bless the chemotherapy, bless whatever modality that you're using. So the issue with this one was high blood pressure, quick rises in blood pressure, changes to the heart palpitation, heart rhythm. So he had the blood pressure cuff on, and everything was being closely monitored. And I was sitting with him as he was going through this. This is where I like to be, at the very beginning of everything, diagnosis, then so the people can listen to their doctors because they're not in a state of fear any longer. Then that first chemotherapy session, because that's where people experience nausea, heart palpitations. A lot of this is based in the worry, the deep worry of what's going to happen to them, and the fear, and then the judgment about how their body's going to respond, if they're going to be okay. So what I did for him, we just started noticing the cuff was going on and off quite often to check the blood pressure, and it was going off. So he had his little button to call the nurse, and I just reached over and asked him to give me his left hand, because that's the side where most of the heart is located. It's really pretty centered. And I just lightly held his pinky finger. And as we did this, we watched his blood pressure start to lower. And by the time the nurse came, his blood pressure was harmonized. It was in a very safe range. And he just turned and looked at me and he said, "You did that, didn't you?" And what I told him was that he did that. His body did that. His body had the capability, because of its energetic system, like the lymph, like the blood, that it could bring itself back into balance if we knew where the tools were located. So that was a very powerful one. Another guy that I worked with a brain tumor, kind of would come in waves of people with different things. He had suddenly come to this brain tumor. He was driving to work, no problem. And all of a sudden, he couldn't move his arms. And he was able to get himself to the side of the road. And I don't know how he turned off his car, but somebody came and got him. They took him to the hospital and they found the tumor. So he came and I listened to his pulses, and I don't recall exactly what I did, but I know I did a flow. So either I did the third method of correction, which is similar to the main central, or I did the main central itself. And he knocked out very, very deeply. You know, you'll have a client who they lay on the table and they're gone. And it's different than just sleep. It's almost like their little spirit moved aside so you can work with the body. Anyway, so he fell deeply, deeply asleep. And when he woke up, he said to me, "I feel so good. It feels like my brain was just bathed with warm salt water." So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I thought, I wonder what happened. And somehow I got led to on YouTube, a TED Talk that was just about this. And he was a guy who had not been able to sleep long before the brain tumor showed up. And what this TED Talk was about, and you may remember it, you know, we talk about having a lymph system for the body, but there is no technical visible lymph system for the brain. But what happens in that very deep sleep, the cellular structure sort of spreads apart and makes space, and cerebral spinal fluid bathes the brain. It's like a dishwasher, is the way I thought of it. And so I just pictured him getting so deeply asleep that cerebral spinal fluid was able to go through and kind of clean his brain for him. Can't prove it, but he felt so good afterwards. It's always fun to see the results that your clients and friends and family report back to you about this. So when I was at the cancer center, I didn't always get to see people through every period of their treatment, but I would usually kind of enter in midstream. It was, towards the end of life, or maybe it was because radiation was giving them trouble. So I never got to always be present through that. But now in my practice, I work with a lot of people from the very beginning through. Today, I have a client who is having lung surgery. She's a 32-year-old woman with a neuroendocrine tumor in the upper lobe of her lung on the left side. So I've seen her 3 times since she was diagnosed and know a little bit about her. We've done some things mostly for stress relief, but always to move energy through the chest. And I've given her some self-help to do, which she's been doing a lot and getting a lot of assistance. And it's just simply the first step of the lung flow. So she puts one hand here at the clavicle, wherever feels comfortable. And then the other hand, you can't see it, it's at the base of the rib cage. So if you are a student, it would be energy locks 22 and 14. And oftentimes when I give the self-help, I like to keep it simple the first time because people are overwhelmed already. This was all I gave her, along with just holding her fingers. And I have a little handout that I give out with the fingers related to the emotions. And I mentioned to her that the ring finger is the finger that helps with the breath and the lungs, even though the physical lung energy goes through the index finger, but I didn't want to complicate. So this was all she did. So she came in yesterday, and she's having surgery today, and she reported she had had a lot of scans to see where the tumor was, how big it was. She had realized something was going on because her breathing had really gotten troubled. And she said that from the first scan to the pre-scan they did for today, that the doctors were surprised to see that the tumor had shrunk and that it was not blocking her bronchial tube the way it had been before. So she's already receiving benefit and she had had no other treatment. So I tell you that because even the simple things that we do, just a couple of sessions for someone, can start to bring things into balance and the body is going to respond. And her self-help definitely made a difference for her too. We know that self-help is that added bonus to really not only keep the energy moving, but my goal with the self-help is to empower people. I'm a woman on a mission. And yes, I'm a practitioner, but I also have a mission, and my mission is to empower every person on the planet. And I reach out any way I can, that they have power just in the finger holds, that they can help themselves, they can help their family by teaching this and using it themselves. So that was a really good outcome. And then I do a lot of since I was at a hospital, I do a lot of other clients who are having surgery. Before I was here, I just treated another woman who had a shoulder replacement yesterday. So she's home. So I went to treat her today. And this was very interesting because she has a shoulder replacement. And, people tell you bits and pieces of their story of their life, which is the story of energy, as you get to know them. And I had been working with what I heard, in the pulses and things. Today, I just simply did opposite fingers and toes, just to help energy moving through every bit of this. I also palmed her calves, which her family did for her too, to help her with the anesthesia. Lucky for her, she did not have pain medications. They did a nerve block. which is much better for the physical body. It's going to be uncomfortable when the nerve block wears off, but you don't have the side effects of constipation, diarrhea, those things from the intestines, from the opioids or whatever pain meds you're using. So far, so good. She said to me as I was doing the opposite fingers and toes, when I reached her pinky finger, which, if you remember, is the energy of the small intestine and the heart, goes through this up through the shoulder, that when she was 7 years old, her finger was crushed by a boulder when she was playing in a creek in a river with friends. She's from Colorado. She had a bunch of crazy accidents, and a big rock just simply smashed her finger, and it is quite crooked. And I thought, I wonder if that was the beginning of the disharmony that then moved up into her shoulder. So just fun and interesting. I'm going to kind of zip back and forth about things. If you have any particular question that do you have a story about such and such, let me know. I also do a lot of palliative care. And the palliative care started again with volunteering. When you're starting a practice and you want to know, how can I reach people? How can people start to learn about Jin Shin Jyutsu, which I say translates into the best thing you never heard of before? It's sometimes by volunteering. So that's how I ended up in the cancer center, but also I began volunteering with hospice. And here's how I convinced them to have me come. I asked them, or told them, that they could send me to their clients who really were asking for a massage, but their bodies were so tender, or they were in so much pain that actual physical pressure would be too much for them. And they said yes. So I had a number of people I worked with palliative care in home, and then I would follow them into our hospice care wing at one of our local hospitals. And what happened was, I had one of my first clients. She had breast cancer. She'd been experiencing that for many years and had a holistic approach. And it had really done well for many, 20, 30 years, but it was back. So she was seeing me mostly for pain management. And she knew she was towards the end of her life anyway. So one day, she messages me, she's in the hospital. So she asked me to come treat her. I actually treated her basically as a guest, as a friend, as opposed to being, a practitioner with the hospital. And I treated her 3 days in a row, and she left hospice, and they thought she was going to die. So the doctors were interested as I was treating her, and they got a hold of me and asked me if I might like to come back and work with some other patients. So I said that would be great. And I got to sit with them at the table. I would go for a couple hours once a week. So they'd get together in the morning and talk about all the patients and who needed what, and they would recommend maybe 4 or 5 patients for me. And a couple of interesting stories. There was a woman one time who was very anxious, and they asked me to come in to treat her, older woman, and she declined. But the interesting thing about it was, back to self-help, she was laying in bed and she went like this. And she said, "Only Jesus can save me." And I thought, okay. But she was holding her energetic centers that help us with adaptation, that move 144,000 body functions, and she has her hands at her heart. And I really thought, she is right. She's doing fine. She is harmonizing herself as she needs to be. Then I had another patient there who they called me up to come see because he had some terrible eye infections. He was towards death. He was blind, and he had, all kinds of oozing. It was pretty horrendous to look at. And so he was all covered up like a mummy, and really nice guy. And so we started talking, and he was from this area of Kentucky, talking about the history of the place, how much he loved to fish and how he longed to see it again, and that, but for many months he had been blind. And honestly, I can't remember what flows I used for him that day, but he had a wonderful session and he said, I feel so good. Please come back next week. I said, sure, I'll come back. So the next week I go, and before I do the doctor rounding thing, I thought, well, I'm just going to go check on him. But as I walked in, there he was in a wheelchair, everything unwrapped, no more gauze, and he could see. And he said to me, I can see now. And he said, my friend has come. He's going to take me out and we're going to drive around Lexington. I really want to see my community. I just want to drive around. Do you mind if we do it another time? And I said, oh my gosh, no, absolutely not. That's so cool. So he left, and I did some other people, and he passed away the next week. So he was harmonized. He got the gift of what he wanted. Again, we as practitioners don't always know what the outcome is. We know what our flows move through. We have these lists of things that Jin Shin Jyutsu can help, but truly we are the spark. So we don't always know what's going to happen. And then during COVID, all practitioners have been having to be adaptable, and I am one of them. I started, number one, working with more animals because I could do that outside. But I did and continue to do a lot of distance healing. And I hadn't done that much of it before. I did use distance healing at the university. Of course, they didn't know I did that, as it was necessary. For example, I had a woman one time who I'd been treating with colon cancer. Mostly it helped her with pain. And I was in my office, and my office was set such that there was a bank of elevators right by me. So with my door open, I kind of kept track of the comings and going. And she had come in on a stretcher, and I saw her come in. And she was yelling to me because she knew my office. I need your help. I need your help. So I ran out, and her husband was there. I'd never met him before. And he said that she was in terrible pain. Would I come treat her? But they took her up to get her settled into a room. We all went up, but it was just too chaotic to be able to work with her at that time. So something came over me, and I said to her husband, because they kicked us both out, let's go downstairs. So we went to my office, and I said, I want you to lay on my table, and I am going to treat her through you. So he lay on the table. I listened to his pulses. I did some things for pain management and different things. Again, I can't recall specifically what flows I used. But it was almost like both of us noted that we could feel her almost enter into the room, and she was a part of the treatment. And when we went back upstairs, they were still kind of getting her hooked up, but already her pain level had just decreased considerably. So that was very cool. And then I started on Facebook just for fun. I thought, well, we all have a lot of time on our hands. So I asked some people, let's try this. Anybody want to sign up? I'll do a little session for free. And I was doing that for people, and they were experiencing some positive results. And then one day, I got a message from a woman in New York City, and they had just closed everything down. And her husband was the head bartender at a really well-known restaurant there. And he had come home that night from his last night and broken out in a terrible fever. And surely he had COVID, all the symptoms. He was very sick, very high fever. She was very, very upset. And they were also extremely afraid of going to the hospital. Because if you recall, there were freezer truckloads of people and hospital lined up and people going on ventilators, and it was so confusing. So of course I didn't tell them not to go, but they were willing to have treatment. So just right then and there, I hung up and I went and I started treating him. And his fever broke. He was not cured of COVID, but his symptoms became more manageable. I treated him just a couple of times, but I gave them self-help. And really, I stick with the simple, especially in emergency situations, and that is opposite fingers and toes. It's just so dynamic. So she was doing that for him. I also had her holding back here at the top of the scapula. That's that energy lock 3. We think of that as the key to the immune system. And it helps break fevers. I would do that in the hospital for children a lot. Babies, you just hold that and hold their whole hand. So I was having her do that for him as well, to keep the fever and to boost the immune system. She came down with COVID symptoms shortly thereafter. I treated her as well. So that was a really nice outcome. And then there were people with problems with their animals that I couldn't go into their houses. And, you know, some people, their dogs and cats were welcome, and sometimes their animals were kind of driving them a little crazy. And a woman, when I said, oh, you know, practice working on your dog. And she gave me a message that she was at home with her dog, but it barked at the table all the time, begging for food. And it was driving everyone nuts because they're all home and they're eating meals together. So it's more than once in the evening. So we set a time, and I just told her, this is a time I'm going to work at your dog with your dog. It was around their lunchtime. And what happened was the dog went to the table and then just simply laid down on the ground and fell asleep. So she was surprised that it was right in timing with what was happening, with what would have been usually a different outcome. Oh, I want to say hi to Bill in Davis, California. I'm a Californian. I went to UC Davis. So those are a lot of different stories. I have so many more. But the thing I want to encourage you all is you can do distance healing. You can teach the simple self-help. And my last point I want to make is when you do self-help for yourself, you know, we're all wondering how we can help the world. And I wasn't able to be on Wednesday's meditation where so many of us came together. As you do your self-help, I'd like you to exhale and envision what you're doing for yourself as expanding and expanding and expanding. And it can reach particular people, but it can reach communities. It can surround the world. Just know that what you're doing is so amazingly powerful. You have the power to really help not only yourself and your local friends, family, and clients. Your energy can really help the rest of the world.
Indeed. Well, so everybody, I hope you'll agree that there was a rich variety of experiences that have been shared with us by Jennifer. Quite the cocktail. Jennifer obviously has worked with critical labels, and as she's, related to where she worked in the hospital, and worked with animals, and worked remotely. So anyone who's new, I hope you can. Oh, and of course, yes. And Jennifer has mentioned what happened on Wednesday, how we extended the energy out for peace in Ukraine. I think anyone who's new, don't feel overwhelmed. This is just showing you the flexibility of Jin Shin Jyutsu, that, we have that innate power that moves through us, that energy that moves through us, and it can move through anything and help harmonize anything. I mean, I could have mentioned at the beginning, I'll mention it now, that Jin Shin Jyutsu isn't actually a substitute for other, modalities in terms of medical work. It's a complement. But I hope you can tell from what Jennifer said, it's a very powerful compliment. And, you know, when you hear these stories of practitioners working alongside other professions and getting great results, you know, and the client actually recognizing it. And what Jennifer said, if more of us could actually write about this, start talking about this. I put a little note on Facebook. For those of you that don't know, we do have a Jin Shin Jyutsu official Facebook as well as a YouTube. And currently I'm your host on both. I'm the new social media guy. Please write to us. And I would love it at some point if we would be able to collect some of these stories and maybe put them in book form or some downloadable form if people agree to all that. But the more we talk about this and relay our experiences and show one another what can be done, the more we broaden the effect of the energy, because even talking about it is moving that energy. And the more we move energy, the more those stuck issues can be harmonized. So again, thank you, Jennifer. For those of you that don't know, Jennifer has been on. There's another recording of her. What was it, about 2 months ago?
Yes.
You know, you could catch up with what Jennifer was saying there as well. Just go on to the YouTube official, Jin Shin Jyutsu official, and you can find. I think they're all labeled. And you can see what Jennifer said before, and now you can see what Jennifer said today. And I'm sure we'll have her back at some point. But before I say au revoir, is there anything else you'd like to say, Jennifer?
Yeah, I wanted to let people know that, I've got a website that I share lots more information on. It's jbradleyjsj.com. And I do a little newsletter where I send out, sometimes handouts, sometimes tips, things like that. And I'm always happy to talk to people who are trying to figure out how to establish a practice, if they want some tips about that. I teach the animal work. I do that in person, but I do some online, and I have just an online course, just a basics introduction. If you're somebody who already knows Jin Shin Jyutsu, a lot of it will be very familiar to you. But, you can join my newsletter if you want to get updates. And I do 30-minute self-help practices, probably about 4 times a month, that are free. And it's my way of just sharing Jin Shin Jyutsu with whoever shows up. January was about dry January for people who were trying to refrain from alcohol. February, we did a lot of practice. It had to do with the heart. And March, I've just been kind of waylaid. I'm a little late. It's just going to be very simple finger holds and very, very simple stress, anxiety for life, because so many people have been contacting me about that. So I'm happy to be a resource in any way I can help.
Beautiful. So I put Jennifer's website there in the chat room. Well, I thought I did. It's there somewhere. It's there somewhere. Yeah, there it is. That's it, isn't it? jbradleyjsj.com.
jbradleyjsj.com. And I'm on Instagram. I'm Jennifer Bradley JSJ. Same for Facebook. I've been doing some things lately where I've been putting some tips for animals and translating them into Ukrainian, because I have a couple of people I've met through Jin Shin Jyutsu who are in Kiev. So I'm trying to keep track. And when we feel like there's not much we can do to be helpful, I thought, well, that might be something. Maybe someone will come across that. A woman contacted me for her dog was extremely upset in Kiev because of all the bombing and things. And actually, she's been able to have her dog sleep through the night, even in difficult times, and her as well. So that goes to show you that crazy power that Jin Shin Jyutsu has to help us and help others.
Indeed. And I noticed in the chat room some people saying they either didn't get on or they didn't get the link to get on for future Wednesday meditations for Ukraine. There is a replay, and I'm told it will actually be on the Jin Shin Jyutsu official YouTube. And I'll probably make a note of it on the Facebook page, and I will always advertise it on the Facebook page. I think the instructors are moving back towards doing it on, doing what they used to do, like the We Are One, on a regular basis, and that will be the beginning this Wednesday for Ukraine. And, for the whole world, I'm not going to get Trekkie here, but for the whole universe, as above, so below. Who knows what's going on elsewhere, folks? We don't, do we? Whoops, my phone is ringing. Is this the signal that it's bye-bye? Anyway, Jennifer.
Thanks again. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was wonderful to have you again, and we'll keep in touch. And I'm sure Jennifer will hopefully be delighted to join us again at some time in the future. So the replay, folks, you should get within 24 hours in your email in tray. If not, in about 48 hours or so, I will have uploaded this to the YouTube site, so you can get it there if you didn't get it in your email. All right, well, take care. Jennifer, everybody. Au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. Bye-bye, cheerio. Take care. Keep breathing out. Keep connecting. And, the energy goes where our hands and our thoughts go, soul, mind, and body. So each time you might feel a little bit of fear, hold that index finger. It's a bit chaotic out there. Hold the ring finger. A little finger. However, remember, it's all about staying in harmony for me. So keep as harmonious as you can when those thoughts come. Oh my God, what is going on anymore? Well, yeah, what is going on anymore? Harmony is waiting to happen, is my belief. So with that, I will say cheerio. Okay.
Thanks,
Bye now. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.